welcome to Certain Point of View presents The Evolution of Queer Representation in Video Games. Together, we will explore how we've watched queer representation change throughout our lives and experiences as gamers. Before I introduce our panelists, please be advised that our panel does not contain perspectives on the whole of queer representation. We can only speak to our personal experiences, so everything said here today is a reflection of who we are. We are not the end-all, be-all of queer representation. Something that makes one person feel seen and understood will not do the same for another, and that's okay. Panelists, I would like to remind you that criticism is always necessary, but so is being respectful of each other's voices. With that said, let's introduce this talented panel, starting at the very end with dear Anthony Lowry.
Oh, that's me. Hey. Hello, everybody. Wow, you're all great. I'm Anthony Lowry. I use they, he pronouns. I am a former professional Magic the Gathering player, competitive fighting game player, columnist for MMORPG.com and hipstersofthecoast.com. And yeah, I do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you do.
All right, let's move down the line.
Hey, everyone. I'm Raya Jasmine. My only claim to fame, I don't have anything as cool as Lowry, is that I play a character on a tabletop RPG show that airs on most Friday nights with my good friend Frankie. I use she, they pronouns. Yeah, that's about it for me.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Hope you all are doing well today. My name is Omega Jones, also known as the Critical Bard. Critical Bard across all social media channels. I am an actor, vocalist, tabletop professional, hot mess incarnate. I do way too much, just like these fine individuals on this panel. He, they pronouns for me. I am a demigender individual. And yeah, I'm very, very excited to be here with these amazing panelists.
Thank you so much. Let's move on.
Oh, yeah, me. Hi. Hi there. I'm Jeff Moonen. I'm one of the two producers, hosts of the Fun and Games podcast on the Certain POV network, who's presenting this panel right now. I'm also an actor, a voice actor, a musician, and somebody who lives in New York and is just trying to make a living doing all of those things. And a very avid video game collector, and I really need to work on how much I'm spending this weekend.
So say we all.
So say we all.
I'm Matt, aka Stormageddon. Also, I go by Matt Storm. I am the other half of Fun and Games. I also do a podcast with Frankie, currently about Mass Effect, called Reignite. I also produce, edit, and host too many podcasts on the Certain POV podcast network. My pronouns are he, him. And I haven't spent any money yet, but I probably will still.
That will change.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And rounding out is me. I'm Frankie Bradley. I am a podcaster, fiber artist, writer. I host a show with Matt. I perform on a tabletop RPG with Raya. And that is about it. Let's move on to the discussion. All right. So, we're here to discuss how queer representation has affected our lives, how we've seen it change through the years. And to kick things off, I would like to ask the panel as a whole, what are some benchmarks of well thought out queer representation that we can look at? Anyone can start.
I think a good recent example would be Hades. I think handled both bisexuality and polyamory very well, and was just a straight up blast. Zagreus is a snack.
Don't worry about my melting stones.
Oh, no.
Don't worry about that. I mean,
Everything is fine. We're all fine.
I hit the wrong button.
How are you?
I think that what's also cool about Hades is that, I mean, if you love Greek mythology like I do, you know they all bang each other. It just is what it is. And for a video game, they could have easily said, no, we're not going to do that. And they didn't. They were, I don't want to say they were true to the material, because if they were, Zeus would be having sex with sheep and things of that nature. But I'm glad they didn't do that. But still, it was really cool to just see just honest queer representation without it feeling shoehorned. It didn't feel fake. It just felt like it is what it is, and that's what I enjoy. Like, sometimes it doesn't need to be a big red light. Like, I'm gay, yay. But also I'm human, and But yeah, that's what I appreciated about it.
It is very curious that Hades somehow made Greek mythology less horny, considering how we all have reacted to Hades and continue to react to Hades. That's incredible. And it does raise an interesting idea of because there's some games that have queer representation that feel like you're playing in something what would be called player sexual, where regardless of the gender identity of your character, like anybody can be into you, and that's just what it is. And other times where it feels very explicitly, this character is into this, like they live in this part of the rainbow.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting where that is. And Hades is actually, because of its subject matter, is an excellent case of, it is sort of player sexual, but it never feels that way. And I think that's, for me, one where that's why it doesn't feel shoehorned. It doesn't feel, it just simply is, which is something I feel is a goal of queer representation in video games, where whenever it is that it can reach a point that it feels like this just is. We don't need to report on the 8th Disney first queer character in a movie or anything like that. It just is. And Hades is an excellent look into the future of that, I think.
Yeah, I think another really good example of player sexual, but where you can still customize that experience, is Boyfriend Dungeon, which is up on here, which is a very recent game where you create a character, you can pick any pronoun, you can kind of customize the character completely however you want. And then you don't really see that character again except in the dungeons. You see your partners, and it's not just exclusively, bisexual, pansexual. It's like there are asexual characters that you get to befriend a cat. Like, it's not even about just sexual relationships, it's just a game about relationships, period. And I think it handles it really well. It's not perfect, and there are some things that could trigger you that I think are intent to the narrative that are important, but I think overall it still portrays queerness in the most real way I've seen it in a game in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, touching more on that. To bring an even more recent example is Tiny Tina's Wonderland. Like right from the get-go, you make your character, choose your pronouns and whatnot, and it doesn't matter what pronouns you have or whatever. Characters that are into you are going to be into you. Just to have it, that game's hilarious, by the way. And just to have it just feel like it's just there and it's natural and it's cool that, touching on Omega's point, it doesn't feel shoehorned. It doesn't feel like, oh, by the way, let's make this whole scene about this and fireworks and confetti and everything. Like, it's just is what it is, and it adds more, I guess it makes it feel more human, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Because there's a lot more to these sorts of experiences than simply who you're attracted to, and those play right into it. No pun intended.
Jeff, I'm really glad that you brought up the concept of player sexual, because that is something that we encounter a lot in our video games that is supposed to fill in for representation. Every character is bi because they're into you regardless, right? How do we feel that the player sexual concept fits in queer representation? Is it something we can see as a good benchmark, or something that requires work?
That's a good one.
It's almost like I'm an academic.
Well, much like a lot of the discussions that Matt and I have on Fun and Games, it's like these things that we're asking the questions, we're thinking about it, y'all think about it, this is what the point of it all is. And I think it's something that can be very good, because there's also a lot of queer experiences that can be feeling very isolated. And having an experience, even in a video game, in a fictitious world where someone unequivocally wants you, whatever that might be, whether to date you, whether to fade to black with you, whether to play games that we don't typically talk about or anything like that, it is to have that situation where it is unambiguous, even if it is technically player sexual, is empowering and is wonderful. But again, it could also be ham-fisted writing, or it could just feel like, I often think of how in the development of The Sims, there was that weird code rollback that happened during development that meant that queer relationships could happen, and that accidentally was in the demo, and people lost their minds about it, and they went, well, Sims is queer now, let's do this. And sometimes that's how we get progress, and you know what? That was an accident. That wasn't even a distinct thing that anybody wanted to do, it wasn't a plan. But we got it, and I think it made a lot of people feel seen, and in the idea of, that works in a group setting, because The Sims, it's like, oh, we're creating suburbia, we're creating a community, and if in that community, you can have something as simple as that treated as equal, equitable, is very powerful. I don't think it should be applied to everything, but I think it can be great.
I do want to kind of touch upon like the player sexual stuff, like with Mass Effect or Dragon Age. A lot of these also have like character creators, and I think that there is a very important role in character creation for folks who are exploring their own gender and gender identity. Like for me, one of the like very first games where I made like a conscious decision to like I want to play as a girl was Mass Effect. And like that was, at the time, a radical act for myself. And so I think while player sexual representation can be kind of like, because it's not quite like explicit and it just kind of seems like shoehorny sometimes, like the Asari. I'm sorry. I don't like the sorry. Hot take. And I think but that does allow for people to express themselves in ways that playing as Zagreus in Hades doesn't provide in the same experience.
Yeah, and I also want to say a quick thing with a small tangent at the beginning, that queerness doesn't equate romance.
You're here. Yep.
It's not every game or character that you make, their queerness isn't based on who they can date and or fuck.
Right.
It just is who they are. And it's funny you mentioned, you made a conscious decision to play a girl or woman with Mass Effect. And it's like, I was playing Chun-Li and Katana, and I realized I was gay as hell from a long But,
Get out of my head.
But it's true. It's wild how much freedom or just how much growth and understanding you can have just by being able to have the choice to play something. I remember I'm a Twitch partner, and I stream a lot of variety. And one day, I really wanted because I love Call of Duty. I love Call of Duty. It's so bad. It's like my most broest moment. Is playing and they came out with Black Ops Cold War. And I remember I was doing the character creation, and there's a clip on my channel right now where I freaked out that you could be non-binary in Call of Duty. Mm-hmm. That's huge.
That's
That's amazing.
They have never done that before, but it's showing that like it's going in a certain direction. And the big thing about it is, just because you were non-binary, it didn't change anything. You're still going to get shot.
You're still a war criminal.
You're still a war criminal,
right?
Yeah. It's like, but it didn't change anything. But it's the fact that I had the choice to be something, and that's so empowering in itself. Mm-hmm. So that's what I want to see more of. I just want to get B. It doesn't have to be a B with the paragraph of why I'm being. Just let me be.
Exactly,
here, here.
Sorry.
No.
yeah, adding to that.
Too polite.
Adding to that, yeah, it also helps with like exploration. Like you made, like as Rhea said, she made a conscious decision to play a girl. Omega played Chun-Li. I'm a Jackal main in Guilty Gear, by the way. I don't. But just being able to make those decisions, like, definitely helped me with my exploration on me being genderqueer and just wanting to not only know more, but just like explore more. Just what if I try something like this? How does this feel? Things like that. And that's like super cool. Like just being able to just do that without all of this, like people bothering me. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, I think one of the most valuable things is being able to ask those questions and explore. Because sometimes you play something outside yourself, and that's just a fun thing that you do. There are so many aspects of identity, and often ones within queer identity, that people come into whenever they do in their lives, not because they had some magical moment or the skies parted or anything, but because they finally went, wait, that's an option? And they had the opportunity to question it. There's that, like, there's the sort of joke of, like, you know, woke games are turning our kids gay or something like that. And it's the kind of thing, I mean, they are.
I wish.
They absolutely are. That's the agenda. We're declaring it here. We are here for all your gabies. But it's not the fact that that does that. It shows that it's possible. I mean, I certainly grew up with enough of an idea that you are either gay or straight. That's it. Yeah. These are the things. Are you male and like girls? Then you must be straight, and that is it. I came into my queer identity as an adult. I came into my queer identity after I was married. And the fact that it's just like, wait, that's an option? Everything feels so much better now. Oh my God. And having all of these explorations that can be had within a game, sometimes you play it and just put it away. But giving those explorations can only be good. It can only be good.
I'd like to move on to another question that Omega actually raised a point for, which is, what role does romance play in queer representation?
I mean, so yes, queerness doesn't equate romance, but it is very empowering that you can romance someone that you're attracted to, whether it's sexuality or whatever the case may be. I mean, just thinking about Dragon Age, especially Inquisition. I don't know about y'all, but Iron Bull is mine now. Oh, period.
Do we have to open up a pit to fight over Iron Bull?
Yeah, I know. But it's
He'd be in the pit.
But I mean, it kind of goes back to the player sexual. While you can kind of do whatever, there's very specific individuals you can be with depending on what you have decided to identify as. While, yes, I was mad that you couldn't be with Jaime Lannister, Cullen, I still understand that was a deliberate choice, and that's a valid choice. I think it's very important. We should be allowed to date and love and have sexual relations with whom we want to in video games, because guess what? It's been shoved down our throats for straight people since how long? Like, it kills me when they're like, hey, yeah, wokeness is turning us gay, but it's like, how many times did I see a stripper? Don't get it wrong, sex work is valid work. But how many times did I see, people busting it down, twerking on my super gay self as a kid? A lot. So allow us queer people to have that to have some of that pie too. Yep. That's it.
I think one of the reasons that we might see queer rep play as like romance is because it is the most easily explicit. And I think that is like probably a good part of the reason, although you do have a lot of games that don't have that romantic aspect, that do have queer rep. Guilty Gear, Strive, I forget the name of the character.
Testament.
Thank you. I am blanking on literally anyone else.
No.
But yeah, like there are plenty of games out there that have somewhat decent queer rep or very good queer rep that are not about romance, but I think romance is the easiest for showing for folks.
Because games are digital, and digital is zeros and ones. Yep. Even though, the binary doesn't exist, the games are, though. And so even the earliest games, the reason why video games have violence to them is the idea of kill that is one of the easiest interactions to showcase on a screen, or however you want. And so it's easier to make those sorts of bits of representation explicit because it can be 0-1 on that. How many queer relationships, queer subtext do we see in games or see in all sorts of media that can be explained away as just gals being pals because of the fact that those explicit things don't happen? And so sometimes they almost have to be put into the design. They don't have to be, but it feels like they have to be put into the design in order for it to be, no, please, this is a queer romance. This is a queer relationship. This is a queer game. And it's, again, no real answer. I hate saying that. God, I hate saying that.
If I may contribute a
Please.
response. Personally, I feel that romance, in regards to queer representation, helps people who are struggling with their identities, who are struggling with their orientation, their sexuality, observe and perhaps mirror how to have those relationships in their day-to-day life. So it serves as an example. For example, the very first time I ever felt seen and comfortable romancing a feminine presenting person was in Mass Effect 1 when I had the opportunity to romance Liara. It was this unlocking moment for me where I was able to learn that it was okay to have these feelings. I was able to just have the experience in a safe place before having the experience in the real world. So, in my perspective, queer relationships, queer romance in video games is a model that one can take out and practice in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, kind of in a similar vein, we're both going to talk about Mass Effect now because that's literally a podcast we do.
This
But
is
like
now Mass Effect now.
my canonical Shepherd before I played as a male Shepherd for our podcast is a femme Shep. Because Jennifer Hale rules, and so obviously I want to play as Jennifer Hale. But when I explored the second game and pursued the romance with Thane, it was an early moment where I was like, oh, okay.
Am I into this?
Yeah, like, am I into this? Which leads to a whole history of not only being bisexual, but also being a monster fuck. It's a long story. It's fine.
Wait, you didn't romance Garrus first? What type
No.
of... Oh my god.
Garrus is a good
romance
best
Garrus.
friend. I don't need him as a relationship.
Garrus and Tally are in my polycule.
Yes, same.
That's news to me.
We share a polycule.
But like, that was like an early moment where even though I identify as male and I was playing a femme character, the relationship part of it reflected something back at me. And even now, having played femme shep as long as I have, I am starting to ask those kind of gender questions that I never asked before. And I think video games are a great tool for that. I think where it fails a lot is when developers, especially straight developers, are trying to explicitly point out to you that someone is queer or trans or something, and they put it in the narrative as like, hey, this is a trans character, I'm a trans character. Like, it's just those kinds of things, and sexuality related also, when they put it in that explicitly is I think where we hit the failure point. Which is why I think the relationship part of it is so important, because it's an action without words, or can be, in a way that doing it via dialogue or character development is much more complicated. It's not impossible, but it's definitely more complicated. Actions speak louder than words kind of a thing.
Right. To touch a little bit more on that, like, we're still playing a video game, right? And I know for me, there's so many stories, a lot of queer stories that are just so long. And I'm sitting here, I'm just like, all right, look, I get where this is going, but I'm not trying to go through 35 quests to try to figure out if this person's into me or not. But come on, like, I forget, it's been years since I played Dragon Age Inquisition, and I forget her name. But she was like a paladin type. I really forget her name, short hair.
Cassandra?
Yes, Cassandra.
Cassandra.
Ooh, Cassandra. Anyway, and I remember going through that, and I'm just like, I just need to beat this game. I'm over it. And I think it's another failure point where it's touching more on that. It needs to feel worthwhile too, because again, you're playing a video game. And while I got a lot in terms of my gender identity and exploration, I'm not going to sit here forever, like for real. And I think there's a balance between ham-fisting it and like it just taking too long or just it's too elaborate. Just I want it to feel like there's actual progression in what I'm trying to get out of this.
I would like to pivot a little bit towards criticism. We
Spooky subject.
And a chill fills the table.
Sorry, you derailed me.
This is what I'm here for.
Anyway.
Why are we like this? Okay, I would like to pivot towards criticism. We started talking a little bit about things being ham-fisted. We started talking about characters maybe not filling the roles we expect them to. What are some games or experiences that you've had that you are critical of, that you would like to criticize openly?
Any game with no black queer people.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Like, come on. like, even in the past, like, especially in the past few years, like, come on.
Literally where I was about to go. I'm like, other than Riley and Last of Us Left Behind, and I think maybe like one other black queer game character, how many can you name? You can't. And it's kind of wild at this point. And I remember, and I'm an open, honest individual, and we had a conversation beforehand, and I was like, here's the thing. Y'all queerness isn't my queerness. Because a lot of the queerness in games is super non-melanated. And I'm tired of that because my experience is valid and other experiences are valid, and I'm just ready to see more of that. Like, I shouldn't say now, I should say 10 years ago, but that's wishful thinking. So, like, get it together. That's how I feel.
You should play Dream Daddy. There's two black gay characters. And they're both phenomenal.
So, I mentioned before, we talked about some characters. It's just, as Omega said, it's super valid. We need more of it. But also, where am I? Like, why can't I? Like, and this goes back to the player sexual thing, right? When you're able to make your character and stuff, like, all of my characters in my game, because I play MMOs a lot, all my characters are black. Like, they're black as hell. And I'm trying to see more of me, or like an ideal me in these queer spaces, and it's just not there. And if it is there, oh God, it's a 50-50 on if it's done okay, because like, let's say you can name like a black queer person. Can you name any of them that don't have any stereotypes about black people?
Say that one.
Like, how many, you know what I mean? Like, it's tough because I want more queer representation everywhere. Like, I think we can all agree on that because that's what this panel's for, right? But I would love to see more queer people that look like me, or queer people that, you know, that I've, like, just more queer people that look like me. Like, please.
And given that a lot of games have so many customizable options or randomized options these days, it gives us opportunity to see it, but it's not deliberate. You don't, in the same way, yeah, Omega, as you pointed out, like, name the queer people of color in the games.
Yes.
They're whatever you named them, maybe. And I have a love-hate relationship with procedurally generated content. That's my hot take of the weekend. And it leads into things like that. To be able to have a experience where you feel seen, or people who don't look like that. Like, if I'm playing a game where I have to play a queer person of color, oh, how terrible for me. I should have to go through that to play a really good game sometimes, damn it. And so I suppose that is a criticism, or in support of that it's the sheer breadth of choice that we have allows for anything, but then that cuts out on depth, and it cuts out on deliberation. And I think sometimes a deliberate choice that may not perfectly match with us, especially people who are used to seeing themselves in a lot of other ways, it can be, as we were saying before, sometimes seeing those new options is just a great eye-opening experience.
Do you have additional criticisms before we move on?
I don't know if this is a criticism as much as an observation, but like a game that I haven't unfortunately gotten to play yet, but I know did something interesting with their queer rep recently is Haven. Haven is a game that came out without queer relationships, and then later on patched in those queer relationships of diverging genders too, I believe. And that's really interesting to me, and I would love to see more games. I wouldn't consider that an afterthought. It might have been. It could have also been because it's an indie game that it was time constraints, budget, figuring out how to get the game out the door. But like, I'm totally open to more games adding in more queer content. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Mass Effect 3 is complete Caden DLC that you can finally romance him. So like, I think my criticism is, in a world where you can patch and update games, especially on Steam, so easily, even if it's an afterthought, it's better than nothing. But like, put in more queer relationships, put in more queer characters. You're adding DLC for fighting games, we were talking about before, make those characters queer. Like, if you're adding stuff to a game that exists, there's no reason to explore that stuff. The sale of the game is not what you're worried about anymore. You're worrying about the shelf life. So add to it, broaden your audience.
I also just want to mention as a criticism literally every game Atlas has ever made, but specifically Catherine for dead naming the one trans person that they had.
Yeah.
And then they made another Catherine that you could date, and they were trans, and they promoted this by having the characters see them naked and then do a big shocked face. It's fucked up. It's super
And that
fucked
was the
up.
first
Every
thing
Atlas
Catherine
game.
did wrong.
Every Atlas game.
That's exactly what you don't do.
Right?
It was real bad.
And I want to add something really quickly, just based on, because you mentioned Dream Daddy. It's interesting because you mentioned there were two black characters. There's only one. Hugo isn't black. But that's the point. A lot of people use ambiguity as that's okay. Oh, we added a dark-skinned individual who's going to just be what it is. And I'm tired of that across the board, whether it's race, gender, your sexual orientation. Just be explicit about it. Yeah. Don't for lack of a better word, pussyfoot around it. Just be upfront, because that's all we want. We don't need to go through 10 million quests to figure out this one person might be into you, but only you. We don't need all that. Just be upfront. Yeah. That's great. That's what we need.
And this is not to, and if there's a questioning character, say that they're questioning, or make it so that, the character in question is questioning, because that's also being explicit. Mm-hmm. Not to because there's plenty of people out there who are still questioning, exploring and stuff, and it's okay for that to be explicit in these games as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My next question for you all is, when there are queer characters within a game, but their queerness is not a factor to the overall gameplay, how does that affect our experience?
Ooh. May I go first on this one? All right, so as I mentioned before, I play a lot of fighting games. Guilty Gear is the one I play right now, and Testament is a new character come out. They are non-binary. They're really cool. They are really bad in the game. They're not good. They suck. I'm sorry. But as a competitive player, despite how cool they are, despite how fun they are, I have to make a decision on, do I really want to play this character, hurt my chances of winning in games? Sorry, Testament, I love you, you're great, but I can't play you. So when it comes to my experience, it's, at least from a competitive aspect, it's okay for represented characters to be terrible in a game. Because, it falls under the same thing as, if you're competing at anything, right? You want to try to have the best chance of doing well in whatever event you're playing in. I think, as much as I would love them to be better, my experience, it doesn't change too much when it comes to that. But if they get buffed, I'm in there, just saying. So yeah.
I also think it's one of those things where, and I kind of touched on it earlier, it's okay for us to just be. Mm-hmm. But also, not that you have to appease media, you have to appease the consumer, especially the straight white consumer who doesn't really care. It's not that you need to do that, but it's it also does say something if you introduce the gay character and all of a sudden they're OP. And it's now you're making it be something that doesn't need to be. People can just exist. And why I don't mess with this game right now, because we don't F with Blizzard, but I think about Tracer and Soldier.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. They are very queer, but they just are, right? Same thing with Apex. Queer characters, but they just exist. They just happen to be what they are. I don't think you need to put them on a pedestal, whether with their mechanics or their story. They can just exist, and I personally enjoy that, especially if it's coming from the black experience. My blackness doesn't need to be on the poster of everything. I am a content creator, I'm a singer, I'm a vocalist. Yes, I'm also a black singer, actor, vocalist, but that's not everything that I am. And the same thing goes with queerness. It's that doesn't have to be the selling point. The selling points need to be what you do and who you are and what you can be, not that you are a queer individual. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think there's also nothing wrong with just existing.
Absolutely agreed. It's and there's always that funny joke that kind of comes up. It's just like, you know what the unrealistic thing is? Having one queer character, because we travel in PAX. Having the one straight character makes way more sense. They're on thin ice. And that would allow for queer characters to be terrible in one way or another, either mechanically or in a story sense. And they can just be. I think that, because we call this the evolution of queer representation because it is an ongoing thing. It is a work in progress and is always going to be a work in progress because times are going to change, cultures are going to shift, and there is no perfect time where we go, it's done. But there are ideals to work towards, and I think where it can just be like that, that's what I want. That's what I want us to work towards.
Yeah,
I'd love it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to mirror what Omega said because, again, Blizzard Activision can kind of go fuck themselves right now. But those two characters specifically were so important to me as a person who played a lot of first-person shooters and felt like in the Call of Duty space especially, until recently, it's for a certain section of straight white guy that is not me. Not that they're the only people who play it, but that's who that felt that was designed for. But with Overwatch and all these ridiculously different, over-the-top, and interesting characters, it gave me a chance to play as the incredibly handsome Soldier 76 and also kick ass, and it didn't affect the gameplay. It was just something I knew about the character that built out the lore and the story. It's no different than the stuff in League of Legends, also a company that's got a complicated history, but like their queer characters are really interesting and in-depth, but it doesn't affect how they use their supers on the battlefield. Like, that has nothing to do with it, and that's okay. It should just be as common as anything else.
Yeah, to touch a little bit more, when we were talking about a character being OP because they're queer or whatever, that actually happened in Street Fighter. It was Seth, who is non-binary. I didn't know that they were non-binary until they had a reiteration of Seth when they came out in Street Fighter V. And they were, oh my God. Like, in the season before that, they buffed Poison, who is a trans woman, and she was really good, like a problem. And people in that community and fighting in community, because fighting in community is a little sketchy sometimes, they definitely tried to push the narrative that they only buffed them because they were queer and stuff like that. And it was just like, no, not really. A queer character can be good. Like, they're a character, just like any of the other ones. Like, you're playing Ken. It's like one of the straightest characters I've ever seen in my life. So, yeah, like that's like actually a thing that happened. And I guess it's the antithesis of what I was saying before. Like, if the character is good, I'm going to play him. Like, straight up. That's just something that I'm aware that they are like, Poison is a trans woman, but she's really good, and I'll play her if she's my style. Like,
Is Poison officially on the books a trans woman? Because I know over the years of Final Fight and everything, the back and forth of cultural, but like that's where it is now these days?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Diversity win.
and there's two characters I think about that I didn't even realize until I realized, and the other one, I don't even know if it's official, but in my head they are. Firstly, how many of y'all knew Berto was trans?
Not me.
All right, there's some hands.
How many knew before going to Google to figure it out, though?
No way they Googled that fast. Y'all Googled that
I think
fast?
that's so cool. Like, I never even thought about it. And I was like, oh, okay. Because it also means Yoshi. It's just like, hey. So, like, I'm here for that. I love Yoshi. But sorry.
You should crack yourself up.
Yeah. But also, a character, I literally do not know if they're queer in any way, shape, or form, but they were definitely formative for me, even though it's not even like a sphere that I'm involved in. But that's Vodo from Soul Calibur.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, just BDSM, just non-binary, just everything about them was just like, I like you and I don't know why. And then I realized it's because they were just so free and open and whatever they were, but they were just, I love them. So yeah, those are my two characters.
Before vibes was a thing, Voldo was queer vibes.
Yes, very much so.
100%.
Absolutely.
Okay, I would like to dig in a little personally here. We've started to touch upon the games that were formative for us, that were integral to our experience coming into our identities. So I'd just like to put it out there in case anybody would like to add. What is the game that was part of your experience? What's the game that turned the key for you? Was there a moment that mattered?
Ray, you go first. I gotta think about it. Like,
I mean, I'll start, but it is not a queer game in any way, shape, or form.
That's okay.
But every single last ninja in Mortal Kombat can okay. I mean, there were just some characters in that game that just made me go, oh, hello. And again, there's nothing. No, that's a lie. Kung Jin in Mortal Kombat 10 was officially gay, which is cool. 'Cause I think that's the first queer character in Mortal Kombat.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But I just feel like all of the ninjas, all the ninja-esque individuals, were all just like polyamorous and all just got around with each other. That's why. I mean, y'all all wearing the exact same outfit in different colors, and it's a rainbow. Come on now.
Yeah. That's that Batman cover from the 70s.
There's even a chameleon who's literally a rainbow. Like, let's not do it.
is that why Scorpion says get over here?
Get over here.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, not a queer game in any way, shape, or form. But I don't know why. I guess that game made me go, oh, I like menses.
I mean, I'll build on that a little bit. Yeah, I didn't have like a closet key moment. I didn't have anything like that, but I definitely have had that experience. Also, as a neurodivergent individual, those things where you realize it eventually, and then you look back on your life and go, well, that was a symptom, wasn't it? And I had a very funny thing. I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan, and there was just this interesting like, okay, and I realized something. Most of the time, the character that I was most interested in or had the most thoughts about or anything like that was usually the unarmed fighter, regardless of gender. Like, I've loved Final Fantasy VII, and Tifa's incredible, and I love Final Fantasy VI, and Sabin can just bench press me. And it goes on and it goes on, and then I realize that my spouse is a second-degree black belt, and I have several questions. But that's okay,
just wanna
because we're here now. And it goes.
So yeah, I didn't really have a key turning game per se, but Sephiroth.
Yeah. I
When
mean,
he walked through that fire, I had to take a walk. I had to walk outside. I'm like, look, hold on. God, when did Final Fantasy come out? 97, 96-ish? So I was like 9 or whatever. I had to take a walk. I'm like, my dad was like, you okay? I said, yes. I'm going to go to the store, Dad. So I guess that was like my key turning moment. And like I couldn't really put it into words because I was like really young. I didn't really know. But like from there on, I knew like there was something that, for lack of a better term, wasn't straight about me. And yeah, just like in terms of like a true moment is when I started joining more communities. I think the communities around the games that I played around, especially competitive games, really helped me like realize more about me.
I mean, for me, like I mentioned the Mass Effect stuff, and on my podcast Reignite, I talk about playing Mel Shep for the first time, and actually, I genuinely, through the process of the way we played the game, fell in love with Kaden, a character I completely wrote off on my first playthrough as Fem Shep, and like kind of rediscovered my queerness through that playthrough we did for the podcast. But if we're talking about early, like non-explicitly queer games, being able to play Chrono Trigger and Chrono being the main character, and me looking over at Magus and going, which like led to also my love of Vegeta and Dragon Ball Z, and it, opened a lot of doors in the anime area for me. But like I thought about like, why does it have to be Marl? Why can't it be Luca or Robo or Magus? Like, why don't I have those choices? I was just curious about why I didn't have those kind of choices back then. And then playing games like Final Fantasy Remake and realizing the love I have of the triad of Aerith, Tifa, and Cloud, and going, oh, I understand now.
Oh, yeah. Also, I want to mention, you didn't know Frog?
I like Frog, but
Have you seen Glenn in that ending?
I mean, he is very hot in that ending.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely.
I already talked about Mass Effect, and we've talked about it a lot already here, so I'm not going to touch more on that. What I will touch on, that's something that, like, in retrospect, for me especially, is my love of the Kingdom Hearts franchise, because Sora and Riku, they are gay for each other. No one would do half of the shit that they do for each other.
I love the cultural writing of so many JRPGs, and maybe it's just a Square Enix thing because that's a lot of the RPGs I play. But those points where it just comes around oh god, what was it? You fool! You've written such strong misogyny. It's come out the other side as homoeroticism. And you know what?
I share a lot of the same things that Raya said about Kingdom Hearts. Like, there's no Kingdom Hearts slander in this room, by the way. Now that you mention it, God, there's a lot of things I realized with Kingdom Hearts. I guess because Sephiroth is in the first two.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sephiroth and Cloud are also, like, really, like, very queer for each other.
You know,
Yeah.
Yes.
Like in that game especially, they're, like, constantly, like, walking past each other and just, like, staring. Like, who does that? I do that when I see pretty people. Me.
I do that.
Me.
I have to add, because yes, I do love Mortal Kombat, but I realized that was just me being a little hoe, and that's fine. What was clearly formative for me was Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Oh gosh, you're right.
Because in the same way with Sora Riku, you listen, Maria, you're cute, but it was Alucard and Richter all day.
Yeah.
He went back into a castle for Richter, not her.
She was just there.
And even did all he could to make sure he didn't die in the end. Like, come on now. Also, yeah, I mean, Dracula can get it too, because, you know, what does a man throw your glass? Yeah, daddy issues. It's fine.
All right, everyone.
No notes.
No notes.
Perfect.
All right, I think it's time to break into the Q&A round.
Thank you all who have submitted questions, or even if you were thinking about questions, just thank you for being here and interacting with us.
Yep.
Anyway.
So if you haven't had a chance to submit a question and you would like to do so, I put the QR back on the screen, and let's get into it. Open spreadsheet. I got it.
Okay.
I believe in you.
I
You
will
can do
let you
it.
do your job.
I'm a strong, independent, non-binary person.
Yes, you are.
All right, our first question comes from Aaron Crawford, and he asks, any noteworthy indie games with queer representation that you'd like to recommend? Let's start at that end and move this way.
noteworthy indie games with queer representation. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any off the top of my head. At least recently. Are we counting Stardew? Is that an indie game?
I think so.
It might as well be, right?
Indie's so nebulous. It's fine.
Indie adjacent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Stardew. That one's pretty good. Like, it pretty much lets you romance whoever you want. Like, I don't think that much dialogue changes based on how you choose your character. Yeah. But anything more recent? Not particularly. That we haven't talked about, not really.
I'm going to be a stereotype and say Celeste, because that game
Yeah.
trans its own creator.
about Celeste. Yeah.
That's how effective of a queer game it was.
Yeah.
I'm actually ashamed of myself that I forgot about Celeste.
I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I was told about Spirit Swap recently. And I know it's all about black queer joy. And it seemed interesting to me, so it's one I've been wanting to check out. So I will also recommend that.
All right. I have a recommendation. I'm just trying to make sure that I get the title correct. Yes. It's called Our Life, Forever and Always. It is a free visual novel on Steam. You can very in-depth customize your look, your gender identity, your pronouns. It can change over time. When you start as an 8-year-old, you can use they, them pronouns. You can change to they, them pronouns later. You can change back. There's absolutely no judgment, and you can fully just load out this experience to be similar to you, or to even be something that you just want to explore and see how it feels for you. And also you have the option of making this a romance, making this a platonic friendship, or even making this a enemies game. It's wonderful. I highly recommend it. It's by GB Patch. Again, free on Steam.
I couldn't remember that it was called Spirit Swap. All I remembered was lo-fi beats to match 3-2. And I've been very excited about that game coming out, so thank you for putting that out there. Jesus. I think so. Oh, I had a couple. One that I really like is Calico, which is just a fun game where you are you're a witch running a cafe on an island full of cats and weird animals. And it's very relaxing and delightful and weird. And the last time I played it was broken as hell, and I didn't care. It was very nice. And the other one that I would recommend is from a few years ago, Sayonara Wild Hearts. I'm a musician. I'm a huge music nerd about things, and that game is just a queer pop concept album as a video game. And much like concept albums and rock operas and things like that, there's a lot of details and ideas that are left nebulous and left to be interpreted. But to the idea of like queer vibes, the vibes are queer. The music is electropop. There are girl gangs on motorcycles and a 3-headed werewolf fight that is also a girl gang. It is
sick.
It's so much fun. It is a game that takes like an hour to play, an hour and a half, something like that.
Hour and a half, 2 hours, something
Yeah,
like
something
that.
like that. It is like broken up by track. It was designed as sort of a phone game that also went to consoles, so some people are mad about the challenge on it. I don't care. I love music games. It is a big old crazy queer pop album as a video game. That's all I got to say about it.
I'm getting this game right now.
My son, whenever I have a 6-year-old son, and whenever we're driving in the car, he requests to listen to that album in its entirety every single time. So maybe games are turning us gay. Who knows?
Yeah. If nothing else, like it's the length of an album. There's Spotify playlists or wherever you want to listen to those sort of playlists. Listen to the music.
It's good.
If it gets you, the game's good too.
I mean, mine is one that's been mentioned a few times, but it's absolutely Boyfriend Dungeon. I'm a person who's played dungeon crawlers my whole life, and like the fact that I couldn't decide who I wanted to date, and then the game was like, why don't you just flirt with everybody? I was like, I've come home. Flirt with everyone. But it's genuinely an incredible game, and what I really love about it is as a bisexual man in a straight presenting relationship with a femme presenting partner, often I feel very much like I don't exist. But that game, even if you as a male presenting character pursue a femme presenting character, like there are no judgments thrust upon you. Nobody assumes anything about you, what you love or what you like. It just gets to be. And I really love that about that game. Also, the music kicks all sorts of ass.
It's bangers.
It's really great, like electropop also. So yeah, that would be my big recommendation.
Yeah.
Hang on one second. Matt, I'm going to put you on blast real quick. You didn't tweet out the link to the form. You tweeted out the link to edit the form.
Oh, whoops.
I'm like, who is this anonymous dingo?
My God.
So if you're in the spreadsheet, please don't touch anything.
Wow.
It'll be fine.
We have 10 minutes left, so I'd like to get through as many questions as possible. Next
Because
up,
these are good questions.
Next up, we have a question from Taylor. She asks, what are your thoughts on games that don't make explicit a character's identity or sexuality, and then different communities try to claim them, or companies try to state it after the fact?
I had an answer until the last thing you said. When companies try to state it after the fact, I'm not about that. Like, if they're gonna leave it up to interpretation, let us leave it up to interpretation.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's fine, but like if a company tries to like retroactively change stuff, like, nah, come on, like, it's whatever. Like,
I think it's about intent. What's your reason for revealing it later? Why wasn't it revealed in the game or whatever type of media it was? Why did you bring it up later? Are you bringing it up because people have... It's like, I don't want to use this example because it's not a game, and also like F her in every ounce of with my Dumbledore.
We all know it's fun.
I'm not gonna get into too much of it, but like we all know what happened with that. And it's like, what's the point? Are you doing it with intent, saying, yes, this person has this blank, and we just didn't showcase that? Or are you saying we had a want to do so, and we like hinted at it, and this is just us just being clear about it, like give us some clarity, not to like take it from video games, but I think about tabletop. I think about Caleb from Critical Role, where Caleb was very much a queer individual, and Liam gave clarity at the end of the campaign versus it being like, oh yeah, he's also gay. It's like, no, this is just to make sure people are 100% understanding what's going on. So like again, there's intent, there's intent, but it's also the impact that comes from that.
Clarity
So,
versus retcon.
Yeah.
We kind of meme on it a lot on Twitter, to bring up Blizzard again, but we meme on it a lot. Whenever there's a controversy going on Twitter, they're gonna have a marginalized character released in Overwatch, or like something involving a queer person in Overwatch. So I remember explicitly it happened with Soldier 76. We didn't know he was gay until something happened at Blizzard. They did it recently with a black woman that got released. I forget her name. Like they were going through some garbage again, and then literally an hour later they announced a new character. Yep. And like that goes to your point of intent. Like, are you doing this to brush something up or save face, or are you just trying to clarify?
Yeah.
And on the other hand, when fan communities see themselves in those characters sort of after the fact, there's bad faith actions that can be taken afterwards or something like that. But I, on the whole, as like if I have to give one answer, do not see a problem with people seeing aspects of themselves, because there's also so many areas of the queer identity. The reason queer is an identity is because there's so many disparate communities, and we're all looking out for each other and banding together for help and survival and everything else. And so very rarely is aromanticism and asexuality a thing that's brought up. It is, but it's rarely done so. So if the aro ace community go, that one's ours, you know what, great. And same goes for polyamory and many other aspects of things that if I try to list them all, I'm going to get one wrong. So just know that it's, and I'm going to miss one. I understand that. Community, we're all helping each other out. And so, yeah, there's stuff that can be done after the fact. But if it's the fans and if it's people that are like, I see some of my experience in that, I think that's what we're talking about here. I think that's what we want.
Definitely.
I'd like to move on to the next question, which I think we'll all have strong feelings about. Julie asks, are there any video game characters you wish you could romance but couldn't because the game wouldn't allow you to?
Okay, so let me get on my Claude high horse about Fire Emblem Three Houses and how I played a male character, a male Byleth, and those cutscenes are the same between those two genders. There should be more gender options. That's neither here nor there. It's Nintendo, but I mean it's just as important. But this is specifically I played as a male Claude, and that dance, the way he looks at you, it is designed to show a true love that like doesn't matter which version of Byleth you play, and there's no option. It's not in there at all. Also, they only have like one token queer character for I think both genders that are represented. It just seems like such an easy thing to add or have in that game. In the same way, like Thane as male Shep, you cannot romance. That's why I had to pick femme Shep. Like those are like the ones that stand out to me the most.
We're probably gonna have to make this the last question, and so I'm gonna make this very brief. Atlas, let me date Yusuke Katagawa, you cowards. Thank you.
My contribution. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. There you go.
My contribution is Tally Zora. There is nothing straight in the way Fem Shep looks at Tally as Tally looks into the middle distance and says, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" And Shepard says, "Yeah, it is."
The ambiguity.
You?
Someone talk.
Well, I know you wanted to go. That's what I was like,
Yeah.
let you go.
Well, I'm sorry for stealing Tally from me.
So
Rude.
So, are we limited to games that romance is a thing, or could it be any game? Because it's Denny and Final Fantasy 14. That's it.
I mean, yeah, I can't think of one off the top of my head, But like, I do love Skyrim, and while there are many romanceable options, the only one I really wanted to date was Sanguine, because the chaotic mess that individual was, just like, love me forever. You even give me a rose. Come on now, like it's right there. Just let me date a Daedric prince. God, that's it.
My characters were already stolen.
Rhea, we can be Team Tally together.
All right. Jeff also mentioned, I'm blanking on his name from Persona 5.
Yusuke.
Yusuke, yeah. I tried so hard to romance him.
We get like one tiny scrap of a notion in Strikers. That is it. We're a couple now. That's it. We're an item now, that's what it is, when they're posing behind the things. Alas.
But also, Atlas, go fuck yourself with all your
Also,
queer rap.
Atlas,
You're doing very bad every single time.
I love the games and I get mad at you every time.
I am so sorry to the rest of the submissions for questions. We don't have enough time to cover the rest, but I'm gonna hang on to these, so follow our social medias so that way you can see our responses. We're gonna try and get them out for you because there's so many really good questions here. I wanna make sure that we address them. And now it's time to wrap up.
Yes, it is.
So long.
Farewell.
We'll take this opportunity for everyone to kind of give their sign-offs here.
Yep.
Oh, hey, that is a nice picture.
Yeah,
it is.
I'm like, hello. Yes, again, my name is Omega Jones, also known as the Critical Bard across all social media channels. You can follow my socials for all the things that I am doing. I do way too much, and that's okay because being booked and busy means I'm paid and my bills are paid. But as far as PAX East goes, you can find me on 2 other panels. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., I will be doing a panel called Hustle and Flow, Real Talk of Making It. And it's basically saying, hey, you're a content creator. You have to hustle to get where you need to go. Here's some tips, because it's hard. It is very hard sometimes. And that's going to be in Bobcat. And then on Sunday at 1:30, I'll be moderating The Spice of Life, the guide to variety streaming. If you're a variety streamer and you want just a little bit of, some tips and some info about variety streaming, what that even means, you can check that out. That is at 1:30 in the Dragonfly Theater. That's me. Again, thank you so much. I super appreciate all of you.
Next.
Next up is Anthony.
Where did I get that picture? Anyways, so as I said in the beginning, I'm Anthony Lowry. I'm a columnist for MMORPG.com, competitive fighting game player. I've been doing it forever. Former professional Magic the Gathering player. You can follow me on Twitter at AULowry. I talk a lot about fighting games, MMOs. I talk a lot about Black queer stuff. I don't have any more panels. I thought I did, but I won't have any more panels for the weekend. But if you ever catch me in the hallway, just definitely talk to me. Say what's up. I'll be at, if anybody will be there, I'll be at the Pearl Abyss after party for Black Desert Online later tonight. Feel free to catch me there. And yeah, it was great seeing all of you. You were all wonderful and amazing. I appreciate y'all.
Hey,
Rhea Jasmine.
That's me. I don't have all of these cool, things going on. I just work at home as a software engineer all the time. And in my time that I'm not being a software engineer, I'm a mom. That's my life. You can find me on Twitter at explosive_donut. It's a really bad story. I've had this handle since I used to play Halo, and it involved red versus blue when Donut came on. Yeah, it was.
Wow.
That was a long time ago, my friends.
Flashbacks.
Because Rhea is terrible at self-promoting, I would also like to tell you that you can catch Rhea at Archives of the Dragon, which is a TTRPG streaming channel on Twitch. And Rhea plays Anil, who is a very, very filthy-mouthed knocker. I calls it like I sees it.
Oh, that's me.
That's you.
That's me. You can find me pretty much everywhere, DJ_Stormageddon. I'm a podcast producer, host, and editor. I do way too much as well, but the best place to find everything I do is at certainpov.com because all of my shows are there. And this was my only panel for this event, but thank you everybody for being here. This is incredible. This was so much fun. And yeah, that's me.
Hi there. Yes, I'm Jeff Moonen. Whenever I have anything going on, you'll be able to find it at Jeff Makes Noise on Twitter. I like to put those things there in the interest of our current time and everything, and I'm very happy for the generosity of the enforcers here. In continuing this conversation of everything that's going on here, we do want to answer more of these questions, and we'd love to hear more of them and continue this conversation with everybody. We'll be trying to answer all of those on Twitter at Fun and Games Pod on Twitter. That is where we have these sort of discussions, and because it's a little odd, I won't sign off the usual way, but I like to say at the end of every episode, this is a conversation, and I mean it so much this time. Thank you for being a part of it.
One more.
I'm sorry, Jeff should have been last.
Yeah.
I'm Frankie Bradley. I'm a podcaster. I'm a writer. You can follow my work at certainpov.com, and you can also find me at Archives of the Dragon, where I am both in Changeling the Dreaming games and also a Mass Effect-inspired 5e game. And that's me.
Now we can.
Now we clap.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much for coming.
Life is a mystery. Everyone must stand alone. I hear you call my name, and it feels like home. Feels like
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun. Whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen,
And I am Matt, aka Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.